Welcome to the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast, the show dedicated to bring you the news from the oil patch deep in the heart of Texas, with your host, Ryan Ray and Josh Shelton.
Back again, Texas Oil and Gas Podcast, episode 221. Ryan was slow on the rip. I'm your host, Josh Shelton, friend and co-host Ryan Ray. All right, Ryan, that was, you had a little delay in there, so I was trying to make up for it. You got 60 milliseconds, and I'm jumping in.
Yeah, for the first time in the history of the podcast, as soon as it says live, you start speaking. I'm sorry. My bad. I should have known today you're on your A game. Much apologies. So it's good to be back though, man. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. I'm feeling good. Man, looking at the price of oil, that's always something good to wake up. You know, Monday morning you wake up and you're thinking WTI has a chance of hitting 80 by the end of the day. That's good news. Brent's up around 82 almost. Natural gas about to hit 6. Life's good, man.
It's crazy right now, isn't it? I mean,
it is.
It is crazy out there. And reminder, let's see here. We are coming up on the end of October, which means if you're an accredited investor and you want to capitalize on some of these high oil and gas prices, you need to talk to the good folks at Jubilee Royalty. I invested in Fund 1. I invested in Fund 2. Would like to have you along with us for the ride. JubileeRoyalty.com is where you can find out more information, or reach out to me. I'll put you in contact with the good folks over there at Jubilee. Mr. Shelton, got a big show today. Got a guest coming on here in about, I need to send him an invite, probably 11 minutes. Send him an inviting, and lots to get to. So,
yeah, let's jump into it. So we've been talking about inflation. Now, I know nobody's noticed inflation.
No one.
One.
Where are you seeing this inflation at, Josh? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that reminds me of a little clip of Biden when he said he's going to pass this infrastructure bill of $3.5 trillion, where they're going to print more money, and he said that it'll help reduce inflation. Printing $3.5 trillion
obviously
will help reduce inflation. Obviously, it helped reduce inflation over the last year and a half. Not just Biden, Trump printing $2 trillion, all the money we're printing, that's certainly helped push down inflation. Obviously,
we can see it all around us. It's so obvious.
No inflation. So there's an article, Hard Energy Hyperinflation, Crude Oil Prices to Infinity and Beyond. Find out why rising crude oil prices could pose a hyperinflationary threat to the U.S. economy. So essentially, this article is dealing with not only inflation, but also just supply chain issues, cost of energy going up. So it's not just inflation, but inflation is playing one significant part. And it's something that I think a lot of economists are a little nervous about right now.
Well, they should be, right? I mean, you talk about, you went and got a truck, and you're talking about going in the dealerships and how they were trying to go and buy other new trucks from new places. And I drove past one of the dealerships here in town the other day, and they had like 7 trucks in the car lot. I mean, like there's like, this is a prime dealership, like a Chevy or Ford, or I can't remember which one it was, but it wasn't like a used car lot. They had like 7 to 10 trucks just on the lot. It's empty. It's like, wow, what is going on? And of course, Diet Dr. Pepper should sponsor this show, because that's Josh and I's favorite drink. And it's not only ours; it's everyone in Hood County drinks Diet Dr. Pepper, because when you go to the store, they're gone. And but you could keep unpacking this and go further and further down the road. We had Mark Rossano on Inside the War Room talking about this. And there's pasta. There's a box of pasta out there. I can't remember who makes it, but it's the same size box. But if you look at the grams, it's significantly reduced. Like by 25, 30% from one box 6 months ago to now. So it's shrinkflation, right? So the inflation is causing shrinkflation. So the higher oil and gas prices get, we're just going to see more of this throughout the economy. And so and we have, as you mentioned, we have other problems in the economy that if the economy was roaring like it normally, or like it has historically rather, the $75 oil price might not be the end of the world. But at this point, you're sitting around going, man, you're putting the squeeze on people from so many different directions. And it looks like it's only going to go up because there's not enough U.S. rigs coming online. OPEC, we're talking about in a second, they're not increasing enough. So it's good news for part of the economy, it seems, but by and large, it's not. And you have to wonder, at what point does the kind of it kind of break because it gets so high.
Yeah, I mean, just for a little bit of perspective, Ryan, just going back to the beginning of all this, um, they passed, I believe, 3 stimuluses. Right now, in the government circulating, we have 7 trillion of government directed stimulus just floating around. 7 trillion. Now, just for a little bit of perspective, I think that's double our GDP for a year. It's like over double. Um, and one of the things that we've been talking about from the beginning, Ryan, is that when you print 7 trillion more of these things we call dollars, all the other dollars lose a little bit of value, and everything becomes a little bit more expensive. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen. And it's, I mean, if you're interested in this, somebody really needs to go check this Hard Energy article out. There's a little graph with velocity of money relative to the S&P index. If you look at the velocity of money and how bad it dropped right around the pandemic of 2020, I mean, it's the biggest, steepest drop in the last 20 years, easy. And that, which means that inflation is happening right now at a rate that we haven't seen. Even the 08-09 crisis, the drop was nothing like what we're seeing right now.
Yeah,
it wasn't even close.
And going back to the shrinkflation analogy, it's kind of hard for the average consumer to understand where it's all happening at because, if you go buying your pasta and you're not looking to see that the pasta is a less amount than it was before, it's the same box. You might not realize that you're getting less bang for your buck until your food, your $400 a month grocery bill or whatever it is, doesn't get you as far as it used to. Then you go, huh? So yeah, it's going to be interesting, and it makes you wonder where people will look to push their money. Will this help push people to the oil and gas industry because they feel like the returns are finally there? They can make money. Or will it push people further away because we're kind of in this weird spot and people aren't really sure what to do? They want to go invest in the stock market because they might think it gets all-time highs. Hopefully, this will push capital back to the industry. So,
yeah, that's one, that would be one positive. So just put a little icing on the cake, Ryan. So when I said there was 7 trillion, that doesn't include the 6 trillion they're debating right now. I think there's 3.5 that they're. I mean, I think they're close to getting 3.5 trillion through. So that's going to be 10.5 trillion since the beginning, which those numbers boggle the mind. I mean,
yeah, they make no sense.
It's unbelievable what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
I think one congressman was up and said, I think it was a 1,400 page deal. Each page was worth, I think, like over $1 billion, like each page. So, I mean, we're talking ridiculous amounts of money. And I mean, yeah, so that's something to watch for. So moving on, Ryan, we have 2 other articles I wanted, both of them dealing with OPEC. Both of them kind of talking about the recent meeting where OPEC agrees to stick to their plan for a gradual oil output hike. So this comes out and basically ensures that oil prices are going to continue to rise. I say guarantees. Makes it very likely.
It makes increases the likelihood, right?
Yeah. So with that, that's why I was saying, crude oil. Let's see how much is up since we started the podcast. Let's see. Now about the same. That's why we're talking that these prices are probably going to continue to go higher. So that if they're doing that, we have a winter coming up. We're gonna need energy, especially in places like Texas. We should see demand pretty strong this year, and supply is going to be low, so those prices should continue to go up.
And you have to wonder about natural gas prices and kind of going into winter again. It feels like a long time ago, but Snowmageddon was just 6-7 months ago.
It's crazy.
I know. Will people look to buy generators to kind of prepare for stuff? So will you see demand coming from unique areas? But you have to wonder what is it going to take if OPEC's saying that they're not going to keep the price, they're not going to increase. OPEC has really done a good job of getting the predictions right this year. Last year with the Saudi Russia stuff, obviously it was a big fandango, but this year the way they've handled things has gone pretty well. So you think of someone like Jay Young or some of these other smaller operators that are out there raising capital right now. Will this help them turn over and get the capital they need? And it should, because the prices, barring some kind of lockdown, barring some kind of reset again, it should stay high. Now, at some point, you would expect that the consumers are going to have to quit buying at the same rate that they are. Now, does that mean that we get bad economic numbers in the winter for travel for holiday season or for Christmas buying? I don't know. Maybe push it on to next year. But there's just a question of how much more can the consumers take. And until then, we need to figure out ways in the U.S. to increase the investing to these operators to help offset that, right? So we don't want the price to come back crashing down, but if we can, knock it back down just a smidge and keep it in kind of that sweet spot that Nas talks about, 68 to 74, I think that's what we need to do. But we're not seeing the investment coming, and we know that OPEC, at least for now, is not going to increase. Well, okay, they're going to increase, but not going to increase upon their projections. So that should drive capital to the industry, right?
Should, yeah. Yeah, and that's been one of the problems that people have. We need more capital. LinkedIn user, hey guys, you see who that is, Ryan, or is that?
Can't see what it is either. I don't know.
LinkedIn user, shoot us a name, man. Give you a shout. Yeah, so I think that would be the silver lining would be some of these things could potentially drive some money to the industry. If there's a shortage of supply, Ryan, this is a question that I've been just pondering. If there's a shortage of supply and there's Stu, if there's a shortage of supply and there's a difficulty in getting necessary energy to different places in the country, say Texas, blackout, or California, New York, different areas where prices begin to go up steeply, kind of like inflation. They start going up at a more rapid rate. Do you think the current administration would be able to call for more energy production without absolutely riling up their base with climate, ESG, and all of that? Now, that's the question: is are they in a position where they can say, look, we need energy and call for it? Or do you think they're, obviously, I say obviously, the thing they would probably have to do is reach out to other countries to begin importing a lot, kind of under the table, not getting any news, because since it's not being drilled here, they probably won't care.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the Biden, so you have the midterms. I think the question is going to be will you see production increase in the first half of 2022? If not, barring it going crazy, the second half of 2022, I don't think you're going to see a bunch of more rigs come on the market because you have midterms, right? So maybe by 2023, and according to Stu, the Saudis have announced that they will have a budget surplus in 2023. Stu, we're just talking about Jay Young and his group. Are you guys seeing these higher prices help with the fundraising that he's talked about with King Operating? Let us know. Okay, let's see. I think our guest is here. Let's go ahead and see if we can get him on. Stefanos, can you hear us? Okay, I don't think he can hear us. Let's put him back in the green room for now. Okay, but yeah, so yeah, I'd be curious to see what Stu's comments on that, because and so Jay Young obviously and King Operating is not going to bring the price down single handedly, but that mentality of, can these smaller producers get money? Yes, he's on TD Ameritrade talking about it now. Why is he not on here talking about it, Stu? What's going on? I mean, like, what's up with that? I don't even understand that. Like, why is he going on some fringe network like that?
I know. Yeah. Well, it's
here. Stefanos, can you hear us? Let's see here. Live podcasting is the best. So, okay, we'll leave Stefanos in here and see if he can come. If he comes on here in a second.
Well, TD Ameritrade, they're like settling for the field goal. You should have went for the touchdown.
Exactly. I mean, why would you go on a fringe network that no one watches or listens to You can come on the greatest oil and gas podcast in the history of mankind. Let's see here. He says he can hear us. Anyways, speaking of which, gosh, next week we have on that Congressman, Jody Arrington coming on.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will be good. Okay, he's going to rejoin here, so I don't know what that means.
Let's get you on, Stu.
Yes, let's see here. Can we just put this up like there? Does that show up? Does the chat show up? No.
Yes, I think so.
Well, it was supposed to be on this. Maybe I don't know. It's supposed to be an overlay, but I don't see it. Anyways, okay.
It overlaid when he said something.
Oh, okay. Yes, dude, you can come on anytime. You know that. So, okay, let's hit one more story while we're waiting on Stefanos to see if he can get his technology worked out.
All right. So, PM Johnson says all UK electricity will be green by 2035. This is more of looking at
lies.
Yeah. Yeah. So, this is more of, I'm not wanting to jump into, UK's policy. It's just looking at other countries and what they're saying about their aims for electric vehicles going green by 2035. A lot of these countries are doing this, and that's coming out at precisely the time that we're seeing an issue with supply. So all of this, all of these talks are just kind of ignoring the situation. So I'm just wondering, and I've been trying to follow Dr. Anas and seeing some of the stuff that he's saying.
Oh, did you see it? Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Did you see his tweet this weekend about Elon Musk?
Oh,
we should pull it up here. So Anas sent out a tweet this weekend from Elon. So Elon Musk was quoted somewhere. Where is he at? Oh man, it was a good one too. Anas is like a serial tweeter. He is on it. Okay, yeah, here it is. So this is from October 3rd. Barron's. Tesla's Musk says U.S. electricity production needs to double to power transition to EV vehicles. That's October 3rd this year. Anas Al-Haji, June 1, 2017. Worth noting here that if the U.S. were to change all cars to electric autonomous, power generation needs to double and grid to triple. So he was telling Elon that he's owed a thank you. So okay, let's see here. I think Stefanos is back. Let's see here. Can you hear us, Stefanos? What's that?
Hey,
there
he is.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Sorry about that. I think it was browser settings on my end.
No worries. Let's put you on the big screen here. There you go. Okay.
Right.
Why don't you give a quick 30-second introduction and let's get into this bad boy.
All right, let's do it. Thanks so much for having me. I'm a fan. I'm an actual listener. I've during the pandemic, I pretty much binge listened to all the back catalog. It's great to be doing this in real life. Maybe proof positive at simulation theory and the loop is closed. I don't know. But anyway, I'm happy to be here.
Great. So tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I look after business development for Evoleap. We're a software and services company based in Houston, Texas. We cater to the energy industry. We have number of products. The company actually, or I should say, the individuals in the company were on the forefront of digital transformation in the early 2000s, or I guess you'd say aughts, or it's always hard to say collectively how you call that decade. 2019, I was so happy. I'm like, yes, we're finally know what to call this thing. And like, oh, wait.
Right.
Guess we're in the roaring 20s now. So
right.
But we were on the forefront of digital transformation in actually one of the largest engineering companies within the flow assurance vertical. It was kind of frustrating that we saw, all the stuff that was going on in Silicon Valley with just these leaps and bounds. And it seemed like in the oil patch, it was information was kind of siloed and didn't seem like we were using the best practices. So the genesis of the company was really just to take an evolutionary leap. go into the next phase and really bring some of the know-how from the software industry into the oil industry.
Okay, well, if you've listened to the show, you know that Josh can't pronounce names or so.
Yeah.
Let's get your name out there one time just so Josh doesn't mess it up. I've got it, of course, but Josh might not get it.
How about Steph?
Steph, that works for us. Okay,
Hey,
Steph,
I like that.
we can say that. Okay, so Josh and I have talked. This has been in 2018, 2017 about the oil and gas industry, about technology, and for a while it felt like, okay, if you go back to, I don't know, early 2000s, 90s, whatever, we went from like the Motorola Razr to iPhone at some point. You really had a big jump. We talk about fracking and stuff like that. Since then, there have been progressions, but a lot of it's been more like the iPhone 1 or the iPhone 2, whatever it is, sequential iPhones. We're the 13 now, I think. So you guys talking about making kind of a leap forward. Are you trying to take the industry to that gap with like a Motorola to an iPhone, or is it just kind of another iteration of what we're seeing? How much of a leap forward are you trying to push the industry?
I think it is an incremental. In a way, it's kind of both. And I know it sounds like a cop-out answer. It is incremental in that we're definitely building on current infrastructure. I think with cloud computing and some of the computer science techniques out there, that is the evolutionary leap forward. But it's incremental in that how it's applied is crucial. It's not like AI is not an easy button or buzzword du jour. It doesn't just happen. It's got to be guided by experience. And that's kind of our, even our motto as a company is we're guided by experience, enhanced by technology. And, that's exactly what we're trying to build and bring to the industry.
Yeah. So I work with a tech startup. I don't know, Internet of Things, machine learning. And one of the things we're always trying to figure out is how to message it. So
Right.
there's problems that we can solve, and there's problems that are out there that we don't know about that we could solve. So let's go through the problems in the industry that you guys are seeing. What are the ones that you are currently trying to solve? And then what are the ones that maybe you're trying to think about that you haven't fully grasped, but you go, you know what? Theoretically, we want to expand into these areas.
Right. That's a great question. So let me just preface that by saying we do a lot offshore. We've been doing deep water development, specifically with multi-phase transient simulation. I really wanted to talk about our value proposition more for onshore in this call because it seems like that's maybe where the audience's interest lies. So I think where we can help there is basically debottlenecking rather, gathering networks and pipelines. There's onshore is more accessible in terms of an operator can go there and look at it as opposed to something under the water or underground or something. But I think the caveat or the trade-off is that you might not have as much metering. You don't often have the same data frequency or data quality on onshore operations. And I think that's where technology enhanced systems can really add value. We can look at what you have. We can merge physics-based models, kind of to fill in the gaps between sensor locations. We have a lot of experience looking at data trending, kind of sanitizing data. The pressure transducer says you're hopping up and down. Is that real, or did somebody connect a wire wrong? And in terms, that's where I think we can add a lot of value. Things like even onshore wax and hydrates are an issue. And then you've got if we're talking about the Permian or Barnett or shale in general. Is the reservoir depleting, or do you have some kind of a blockage? Is your hydraulic diameter reduced due to wax or scale or what have you? Or is it just reservoir depleting, or is it both simultaneously? The answer, you can derive this kind of thing from production history data. It's not always trivial or obvious to say, just by looking at it, say, oh yeah, it's that. So I think that's where we can add a lot of value. We produce software that we use in-house. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a differentiator. And we've also developed and deployed a lot of systems worldwide. So I think that experience, along with the novel technology we have, is really where we can add value. then to the second part of your question, where I see us going as a company, I think asset integrity management is huge, namely around corrosion. This is. I think that the reality is that as you look at things like drone-based inspection, and no matter how you boil it, it always comes down to less boots on the ground. So to me that means that you're going to need better models. You're going to need to understand the flowing systems better. And corrosion is one of those key things that I think we could really add some value to in the future.
Yeah, Josh, I want you to hop in here in a second, but real quick, let me ask you this. So when you think about these things, one of the big problems that the industry has faced is how to improve returns for investors, right? And so what you're talking about, it sounds like, is, okay, hey, there's certain areas in which we're seeing that we could increase profitability, either through maybe preventive measure or something that's being lost. So is that kind of what you guys are looking for, is ways where there's potential waste or preventive waste measures that you're trying to tackle?
Absolutely. Enhancing production, and also on the design side, just designing smarter. When you look at you've got a lot of well pads gathered, maybe not even adjacent to each other. How are you going to produce these? Is it going to be trucks? Is it going to be a gathering network? If so, how should that be connected? That's a hard problem, and there's techniques that have been perfected in the software industry. Like the old traveling salesman algorithm, for instance. That could tell you the potentially the best way of aligning all these wells together and flowing back to some kind of source, or maybe it is trucks. The data and simulations can tell you this sort of thing.
So, what are some of the things you're seeing in the industry right now in terms of ESG and ways that that's been one of the big concerns in the oil patch? Concerns with ESG. Are there things with the data that y'all provide that can help companies at least show up or present themselves in a more ESG friendly way?
The short answer is yes. This is kind of one of my what do you call it? Pet
Peeves?
Pet talking points. The term greenwashing gets thrown around from time to time. Is it real? Is it just for investors? Who knows? It is kind of, not to go out too far off on a tangent, but it is one of these things where, I look at some of our competitors, and, you see the sun shines and windmills, and you're like, oh, okay, that's what you do. And then you're like, well, I know that's not what you do, but okay, sure. We're an oil and gas service company. That's what we do. But that said, we do care about the environment. We've worked with some major companies to do custom development work for apps specifically around fugitive methane emissions tracking. And then the data derived from our system, I think, also can really help to show that they're doing their due diligence. That they are preventatively looking at asset integrity, ensuring that leaks don't happen. We do a lot of analysis around what worst case discharge could be. So I think that can help a bit. But is it going to make the Wall Street crowd happy? I don't want to promise that.
Well, I think this is part of the thing that the industry has to figure out how to message, which is tracking a barrel of oil from the ground all the way to the refiner is ESG, right? Because we want to make sure that we know where it's at all times. And so on one hand, you increase profitability by not losing that barrel that the investors want. And on the other hand, you're making sure that it doesn't get lost somewhere. And by lost, I mean into the the local ecosystem. And so that is an ESG message that we have to start thinking about. Okay, hey, this is an ESG message. It's not some crazy thing that no one's actually doing that we're trying to present. No. We're trying to protect the environment. And by doing that, we're protecting local landowners. We're making sure our shareholders are getting a return. And we're doing all this and stuff. And so it's hard because we're always being attacked from the outside. But there are plenty of things, and we've made our stance very clear from day one of this podcast, that our major concern is obviously the local person that's being impacted by a pipeline leak, which you guys are trying to track. Those are ESG positive messages. And so, can we fix the problem with China putting tons of carbon in the world? No, we can't do nothing about that. But you know, what we can do, we can track our oil from the reservoir all the way to the refinery, and that's an ESG positive message. And so we really need to. I'm not saying you guys aren't talking to the industry here. We really need to figure out how to double down and triple down that message, because we do care about it. We care about it from just a pure profit standpoint because we're capitalists, but also we don't want to spill on someone's farm.
Absolutely not. We live here too, right? I mean,
Right.
We are a Texas-based company, and you know, I love hiking and the outdoors. I mean, I want my kids and my grandkids to have a beautiful environment, that clean air to breathe and all that too. I think there's a good way to do it without kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
That's right. That's right. So I think that the industry has to be careful, which is we could get off on this ESG stuff that's really kind of ethereal and we can't do, but there's plenty of things that are practical that we can do right now. What's been the biggest pushback for the industry that you've gotten? Is it that, hey, we're not a tech company, it's too hard to learn, we can't make money, we don't understand it, so therefore we don't want it? What's been the biggest obstacle that y'all have had to overcome?
Recently, budgeting. I'm talking more specifically about the majors. It does seem like they, for better or worse, they are walking the walk, because it seems like they aren't funding some of the bigger operations at least in the short term. I don't know if that's going to turn around. And another one, not to pivot too much, but CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration is another way of offsetting greenhouse gases, right? Like essentially you can pump that back into a reservoir. Maybe that's just long-term storage, or that's pressure support to produce more hydrocarbons. But the physics behind that are not well understood. I mean, I should say the physics are well understood. The tools, the simulation and modeling tools we have don't handle CO2 as well as they should, really, to do proper design. So that's one of these kind of like catch-22 where everyone would like to do this, but then we're trying, we're courting that kind of work, and a lot of times people say, well, we're not really sure how we're going to do it yet, or do you really have the tools that will, can you actually model this, or are you just saying you can?
And so you mentioned the majors. What size clients are you guys going for? Are only the majors, or do you ought to go for the independents and smaller operators as well?
Oh, all of the above. In fact, I would say that recently our best customers are the more independents or smaller operators. Part of that is the skill set that we have around flow assurance might not be, they might not be large enough to be able to have an in-house flow assurance team where the majors of the world do. So we're more than happy to serve as operators engineer, and we've seen a lot of growth there recently.
Yeah, you mentioned the kind of some of the majors that want to put money into it, and this is always a weird spot, which is when you go through a downturn, sometimes you see companies shift their money to the operations and maintenance side because they really have to focus there now. Like they can't do new capital projects.
Right.
Did you guys see that happen during this last downturn where you might have seen, hey, we're not going to put a lot of money in new drilling, but we are going to double down on our O&M?
I'm just personally, anecdotally, whatever, one data point, I didn't see that double down. Whether they did or not, or whether they were shifting people around internally, that's possible. I certainly did see a lot of reorgs in the majors, not so much in the middle tier or independents. But yeah, I'd say I don't have a good visibility, but from secondary, tertiary effects, I haven't seen that. I can't say that that's happening.
Okay. All right, as we go into Q4, close it in here before too long, which is crazy, 2021, 2022 around the corner. What are some of the trends that you guys are looking for, that you're trying to advise your clients about now? Saying, hey guys, you need to be prepared for this. We want to make sure that we're taking care of you here. Here's something that you haven't considered that we're hearing around the industry.
I mentioned CCUS. I do believe that this is a problem that will be solved. The simulation tool set that's used for oil and gas engineering is being retrofitted, if you will. That there's a huge effort there. around the thermohydraulic response for CO2 transported in the dense phase. I think that's probably, once that nut is cracked, I think that'll be a real thing. I think that investors will more than likely demand, if not the government outright, that certain tonnage of CO2 is reinjected or captured. So that's one big one. And the other thing, I think we're going to see a lot of production globally shifting. So I'd look to Asia and Africa, potentially even Latin America, for a lot of growth.
Yeah, we talked about it on here a lot, which is that the prices keep going up, and it's not like we're just throwing rigs out in West Texas left and right like we used to be. And so that's going to be interesting to see, is when does the money come back, at what price point does it come back to the U.S. side. But if we're not careful, these rigs will go internationally, and then we will slow the rate, the climb in price by international rigs, whether it's Africa, which Africa is chomping at the bit to go and to put more rigs out there. Like, they really want to do this. Okay, we do have a question here. Let's see here from Johnny. CO2 infused oil. I think he's talking about your maybe unpack a little bit of what you're talking about with the reinjection of the.
Absolutely. And now CO2 often does travel in the oil stream. That's I would call it a harmful impurity. It tends to cause corrosion. At least if it comes in contact with water. What I'm talking about is when you have a reservoir, let's say at one edge of it, just to kind of describe it in the simplest term, let's say on the right side, we've got an oil producer. So I'm saying go over to the left side, you drill a pressure support well, inject that CO2. The permeability of the reservoir is likely high enough that you're going to get some pressure effect, but I think if you actually had CO2 bleeding into the oil, that would not be favorable. So that would be probably a time when you'd stop that and look at some other strategy, or maybe abandon the well.
Right. So mainly using CO2 for the drilling operation, but we don't want to mix it when we're transporting it.
Yeah, right. So in the production phase, after this is often later in life in the reservoir, when it's not flowing under its own pressure, we can increase the flowing bottom hole. We'd increase reservoir pressure rather by pushing on the other side of the reservoir, if you will.
Okay, Steph, why don't you tell people where they can find you, mention your company again, and where they can connect, and anything that you might have coming up in the near future.
Absolutely. Evoleap.com, EVOLEAP.com. We've got some great blogs there, and look me up on LinkedIn, please. It's Stefanos Zunez. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay, well, it's great to get you on, and best of luck to you guys in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great one.
You too.
All right, man. Let's see here. What else we got?
I got one last thing for the roundup here. LNG sellers seek credit letters as gas price spike stretches credit limits. So they're asking for credit letters from companies they deal with to guarantee they can pay as the global spike in gas prices takes them beyond their credit limits. So that was one of the articles I was referencing earlier about winter's coming, need for gas.
Mm-hmm.
There could be some issues on the horizon here.
Yeah, and one of the things I liked about what Steph was saying is about the ESG, whether it's real or not. There are plenty of things that we do that, whether we're doing them for ESG reasons or not, primarily is a separate discussion, but they are pro ESG, and we have to learn how to message those things. And tracking a barrel of oil is a pro ESG argument. We should be making that over and over again. So if you are a producer, you should be wanting to track your barrel from the time you drill it till you put it into a truck or to a pipeline or wherever. If you're a midstream company, you should want to track that. You should be talking about that on a daily basis in your media, whatever you're putting out, that your number one priority is to not lose your product, because when you lose your product, that causes bad for the environment. And of course, you want to make more money, so you never want to lose it. But it's an ESG argument that can be made. We should be making it on a more regular basis. And I'm sure there's thousands of other things like that we don't think of that are ESG arguments that we should be making. So be sure to check out those guys at Evo Leap and tell Steph you heard him on the podcast. With that, Mr. Shelton, we have Congressman Jody Arrington on next week. So, what's your question? Are you ready for the congressman? Are you have a question? Are you ready? You can say his name right, like just all those things, the basics.
Well, I rarely butcher names. I'm like the pronunciation guru.
You're the Tom Brady of pronunciations.
Yeah.
Oh, gracious. Well, yeah, we'll see. I'm glad he let us call him Steph. That made it a lot easier on us. So
Yeah.
thank you.
I don't know if you'd have made it through.
No. I struggle with my own name, much less something more than 4 letters. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Johnny, thanks for hopping on the show today. Listeners, until next time.